Alright guys, there's something I want to talk about. I wanted to do this video yesterday, I was just too tired to even begin. There's a divide going on in the metal world, and it's, as a fan of pretty much everything metal, it's pissing me off. And when I hear things like I was hearing last night online, people claiming that they're ashamed to be metalheads now, it's getting to the point where it's getting goddamn ridiculous. I really have no other way to express how much I hate what's going on other than destroying stuff, I guess you could say. I don't get the point. For those of you who don't understand what's going on, or don't immediately know what I'm talking about, there's a lot of inner politics going on in metal today, and it's pissing me off. That is not why I became a metal fan. I'm sick of this crap. I'm sick of this, I'm more metal than you, I'm holier than thou in the name of the metal gods kind of attitude that these people are bringing to the table. One person summed it up best: they're being dicks. And honestly, I'm just tired of it. I don't understand the point. Metal is supposed to be a brotherhood, a unity. And there are people out there that are trying to create this hostile environment for everybody. Let me explain it this way. If you don't know too much about metal, there's so many different subgenres within each style. And one of the biggest arguments right now deals with death metal. There's regular death metal, there's slam death metal, there's groove-inspired death metal, there's Swedish death metal. But the biggest issue right now is deathcore. And this is causing a lot of problems. First, metalcore came out when Killswitch Engage hit. That was basically the huge issue right now. Metalcore is not metal, it's just got metal hooks driving a hardcore sound. Now it's deathcore, and the biggest issue is chugging riffs, simplistic music. I'll admit, I am a bit of a fan of deathcore. I enjoy some of the bands. Suicide Silence, when they came out, I love them. I got their EP back when I was working at WSFX-FM, and I loved it. Then their debut album came out, I picked it up, I loved it. Second album, not so much. Third, actually a lot better compared to the second album. It wasn't all just overly simplistic chugging. And now you got bands like Immure coming out. I just don't like Immure that much. I liked some of their last album. I will admit this. The song Proto Man, I believe it was called. That one was just, I really got into that song when it came out. But there's just so much going on. There's like this divide between people who think true metal is the only metal and people who just, they're new to the styles and they're more into the core elements than they are the regular death metal. You got the elitists who think only certain styles are metal, and certain bands, if they don't encompass everything they believe is metal, then they're not metal. And trust me, I know plenty of these people. One of the biggest issues right now, I'm going to preface this by saying I respect some of these people involved in it, not all. I think, easily, one of the biggest issues when it comes to elitism is the Death Militia. And I'll explain why in a little bit. I've gone to so many shows. I've talked to so many people. My area is actually full of jaded individuals when it comes to true metal. They think they are the representation of metal. They are the voice of metal. Even with my site that I have run for, at this point, well over 30 years, going on 4 at this point, there are people who come up to me and say, why are you reviewing this band? They're not metal. You don't know what you're talking about. You don't know what metal is because you listen to bands like Slipknot. Excuse me that I enjoy Slipknot. Slipknot was one of the very first bands that actually got me pulled into the metal world. To be perfectly honest, I probably would not have found bands like Amon Amarth, Cannibal Corpse, Carcass, Cradle of Filth, God, who else do I listen to? Annihilator, 6 Feet Under. I would probably have never experienced any of these bands if it weren't for bands like Korn and Slipknot. They were my gateway into this style. Back then, they were the first one because they were more of a mainstream sound. They were more accessible. And yeah, I just kind of got into them a little more than anything else. I used to listen to New Radicals, I'll admit that. I hated the album. There was only like 2 songs off their debut I actually enjoyed. Even prior to that, I listened to rap, but that was during my I'm trying to fit in high school grade school to high school phase. And then I just quit caring. And the thing is, I'm fortunate enough that I grew up in a digital era. I grew up when Napster exploded. And you know what? I don't care what anyone says. If Napster didn't exist, I probably would not be as into some of the bands as I am now. I will admit I downloaded my fair share back in the day when it first came out, but that's because I was in my teens. I didn't have money, and I wanted to experience the bands. So I would check out a few songs here and there, and if I liked the album, I would go out and buy it. My collection, as it stands right now, is well over 2,000 articles of music. So my thing has always been, why discourage people from experiencing metal? In any way. If you don't like one style, that's your prerogative. You don't like it, shut up. Don't call somebody untrue for not liking it. Which has happened to me many a times. I have had a few people from this Death Militia tell me that I'm not metal because, again, I listen to Slipknot. I enjoy Mudvayne, Disturbed. I enjoy these bands. I enjoy them a lot better than some of the metal bands that I have come across with. And when I say that, I mean the generic template bands. It's like, oh, I like this band, I'm going to do everything they did from A to B to Z. Yeah. And I don't get it. Why do you have to be dicks to everybody? One thing, my fiance and I went to a concert, and while I was inside, I had to go use the restroom, and when I came back, she's telling me about how people were comparing a deathcore band to bands like Dying Fetus, and you just can't do that, and they were putting down Dying Fetus, basically. You can't really compare the two. But I sat back and I thought, you know, these people, these kids, essentially, need to really familiarize themselves with the early sound. And the thing is, there are people today who would just look at them and say, oh, you guys are fucking idiots, you should not be saying that, and you're not metal, you don't deserve to be metal, you should just stop listening to it, you should kill yourselves, basically. Why not take the time to sit down and talk to them and say, look, you know, this is what's going on, this band has been around for a while, if it weren't for this band, your deathcore band would probably not even exist. And that's one thing that bothers me. When I hear people go out saying, oh, these dicks are making me not want to go out to shows and not want to actually admit that I'm a metalhead, that I'm embarrassed by it, not only does that piss me off as a metal fan, but it pisses me, well, from that person that's saying it, not only does it piss me off, it pisses me off that such a division exists. The reason I am into metal more than any other style is because there's a unity within the style. Back in high school, I was always, much like many, many others in the style of music, I was picked on, I was bullied. I was bullied for years. I mean, to the point where many of these kids today would probably have killed themselves halfway through the school year. And it's... I found metal, I came across it, I've loved it. I've eventually started finding other people that were into it, and it was an immediate bond. It didn't matter what I listened to or what they listened to, we could sit down and just talk metal for hours. There was this unity, it was a brotherhood and a sisterhood at times, if there were females that were into it, which was very rare at the time, especially in my area. It's starting to blossom a little more. So... today, that doesn't really exist. The last time that something like that ever happened, I was at a Dragon Force concert, and somebody just randomly came up to me and said, so, what'd you think of Dragon Force? And we carried on a 20-minute conversation about metal, not just Dragon Force. That doesn't happen anymore. And that kills me, especially at metal shows. One reason I don't like going to metal shows, I'm still going to them when I can, but I don't like going anymore, is because of this group called the Death Militia. And it seems like every state is getting their own version of it. I believe it was started by Will Raymer of Mortician. I gotta say, Will, now, first off, I respect the hell out of them for what they do. They try and get death metal bands unsigned, signed. They try and give them more exposure. They try and get them shows in certain areas. They try to really help out the bands. But at the same time, there's this elitist tone to some of them. I'm not going to say all of them are like that. I have one friend that's in there who he still listens to Slipknot. Bands like that. He loves Disturbed, Mushroomhead. And that's cool. He's a very open individual. He's willing to listen to anything, and he's much like me. I will listen to any style of metal, alternative metal to the rawest black metal you can imagine. But then there are others where it's like, oh, this band sucks because it's not true metal. Okay, why are you being a dick about it? Like, okay, I don't like this band, so you and I are going to have problems. I get into so many arguments with some of these people about bands, it's ridiculous. I constantly see posts from these kind of elitist jack-offs saying, oh, this band isn't metal, or your local band, yeah, you, unsigned individual, your band sucks because you're not true metal, you should just hang it up. And I have actually seen bands hang it up because of all the criticism that they get. I just don't understand it. Why would you put somebody down, especially a band that possibly has good potential, just because they're not not power metal, they're not heavy metal, they're not death metal, they're not black metal, they're not thrash, they're not anything like that. Why would you do that? Growing up, if I had some guy basically railroading me every damn day, oh, well, you listen to Cradle of Filth? You're not metal. Listen to Creator, fucknut. I admit, I listen to Creator, but I found that on my own. And again, I grew up in a digital era. I was able to discover them on my own. And that's the thing. Nobody is really suggesting bands anymore. That's one thing why I do the site. I want to help the bands out. I'm not going to sit here and go, you know what? I'm not going to review your band. I'm not going to talk about your band. I'm not going to talk to you because you're not metal enough. I am not the voice of metal. I am not somebody who feels he is a metal god or anything like that. I am a man who is just a fan of metal and loves every aspect of it. I try and distance myself from these elitist individuals, mostly because they're doing the most damage. And it seems like the more popular this style becomes, and the more expansive the genres become, because bands are experimenting with it and not keeping within the strict confines of what these elitists think metal should be, the more this happens, the more there's a segregation between the styles, and the more it's starting to really tick me off. The best way to put it, growing up, like I said, the unity of metal is what drew me into it. Nowadays, metal is becoming the lunchroom, the high school lunchroom. You had your jocks, you had your preps, you had your hippies, goddamn hippies. You had your, the slackers, you had your punks, you had the rejects. I was always at the reject table. Always, always, always. To me, metal had always been a group for rejects. It's a style where the rejects can come together and not fear persecution. Nowadays, though, best way to represent it, I look at the Death Militia as the jocks. They have the leather jackets, which are their colors. It's their leather vest with all the patches on it, and they belong to the Death Militia, which essentially, in my eyes, is a biker gang in a sense. They have that mentality, which, honestly, guys, if you really want to help out metal, why do you make it like you have to go through all these different initiations? If somebody wants to help out, I don't understand why you gotta become a prospect and then really push to become all, you know, this worthy member. To me, that's just pushing the I'm more metal than thou agenda, and I don't understand it. Yeah, the whole Wayne's World, we're not worthy thing. It's just, that is the kind of separation that I hate, the kind of persecution and segregation within the metal world. And they're the biggest proponents of it. And guys, to be perfectly honest, I'm not bashing any of you. I'm not saying any of you in particular are horrible and ruining the style. But let me put it this way. I have gone to plenty of shows where I have seen band members laughing hysterically at these guys. There have been reports where band members actually are afraid to perform because they think there's some kind of biker gang that are going to cause problems. But, you know, that's your own outward appearance. If you want to do that, that's fine. Metal is about being yourself. So I'm not upset about that. What I'm really upset about is when I go to a metal concert and I see friends there that happen to be in the Death Militia, and they ignore me the entire night. They all hang around themselves. That's it. Now, I understand you're friends with one another, but if you have friends that are not in the Death Militia, some of you guys just completely ignore them. It's like we don't exist. The only time I really remember anybody in this Death Militia ever really talking to me is when I'm able to join the conversation. I have one friend that actually is in this. He's a higher ranked member of the militia, I guess you would say. I don't know all the prospect and full-fledged member and crap like that, one thing that we always kind of fight about is he kind of ignores me and Dana when we're at a show with him. And he's always hanging around his death metal brethren. He always yells at me, well, if you want to talk, just join the conversation. It's hard to join a conversation when all you're talking about is Death Militia stuff. I'm not a member. I don't care. I don't know what happened at your last barbecue. So it's very hard to join in these conversations that way. And I feel so separated. Honestly, if Dana weren't with me at the show, I would be bored and just want to go home. I wouldn't even want to bother watching the bands anymore. Just because I'm that let down. Again, the segregation amongst the metal folk. It's ridiculous. I mean, the only time outside of that I've had people walk up to me is, I've had some Death Militia people walk up to us and they'll just randomly start talking about metal for a few minutes. Or they'll come up and ask if we have a smoke or a light or something like that for a cigarette. And they'll talk to us for a little while. Like, we'll talk about some of the bands that performed, bands we missed, anything like that. But it's so minimal at times. It's ridiculous. I don't understand why this kind of segregation has to exist. Why are people pushing for this to exist? Why can't you just sit back and say, hey, you know what? You like metal. Let me broaden your horizons. Oh, you like deathcore? You like metalcore? Let me see if I can get you to enjoy death metal. Let me see if I can get you to enjoy melodic death metal. Let's see if I can get you into thrash. Why do we have to sit around and say, oh, you listen to Killswitch Engage? Go kill yourself. This mentality, it needs to stop. We're killing ourselves, basically. And without that unity, without that brotherhood, without everyone feeling like we're as one, where's it gonna go? Honestly, the rock scene, it's about the same. I'm finding these people that are like, oh, they sit at the jock table, they sit at the prep table, they're better than you, you're the lowest scum. Back in high school, I loved Poison. I was a huge Poison fan. This was before I really got into the whole heavy metal style that I listened to. Back then, if I didn't know a certain band member name, I wasn't able to name 20 different Poison songs, especially since I just got into them. I was a poser. I was a fake. I was the outcast. I was somebody who was unworthy of their time. And it was ridiculous. That's why I got away from rock. I couldn't stand that. Bands like friggin' Puddle of Mudd, if I didn't know all their songs, if I didn't know the lyrics of the songs, I was unworthy of talking to some people. And then, honestly, I got into metal. I'm like, oh my god, dude, did you hear the new Soilwork? No, let me tell you about it. Dude, did you hear the new Cannibal Corpse? Yeah, it's fantastic. Let's have a discussion. That doesn't exist anymore. It's so rare to go up to somebody and say, hey, you want to talk about metal? Pfft, not with you. Honestly, it's just stuff like that that's killing ourselves. And now that I've gone on a little tangent about all of that and the DM, which, again, guys, I respect the hell out of you. I'm not necessarily putting you down as people or the concept of it. It's just, I've said my point. I'm going to get plenty of hate mail, especially from some of my friends, but you know what? I don't care. That's just my opinion. I kind of forget where I was just now. We need to come together. Because when people who listen to metal start saying, I'm ashamed to be a metalhead, something is not right. Something's rotten in the metal world. We need to stop. We need to take a step back and realize this is a brotherhood. It's not a mainstream thing where everybody is into it. The show Metalocalypse is not reality. And even then, Metalocalypse has more unity in the show than we do now in real life. There are fans that are so devoted to the band that they will actually kill themselves over it. I'm not saying that needs to happen within the metal ranks, but that level of devotion is nowhere near what we have right now. I've taken the time to write bands that have inspired me, influenced me, that helped shape me. That doesn't exist anymore. That kind of mentality. it's when I see, honestly, when I sit down to a Death Clock episode and I get jealous of the unity that exists in that show, there's a problem. There's a problem. Especially when people say they're ashamed of being a metalhead because of the dicks in metal, because of these elitists, because of these people that separate themselves and basically put people into lunch table categories in high school. There shouldn't be. It should be one giant table, one community where people can talk to one another, where people can recommend things, where people are not going to sit there and go, you're not metal enough, you're not worthy to talk to me, you're not worthy to go see this band. I've seen posts online where people are like, oh, you listen to... Who else can I say? You listen to a Muir and you're going to a Guar show, you better not step foot in there. You don't know what metal is. And Guar, you know, guys, they did have some punk. They had some punk in there. They're not just a strictly metal band. So, I've been rambling on a while about this topic, and it's just something that really offends me. I'm 27 now. I've been listening to it, I've been listening to this style now for a good 14 years, if not 15. I haven't been around long, but I've heard my fair share of metal. I've helped people discover metal. Hell, I actually turned a few people that didn't listen to metal, they were all rock and punk and all that, I've turned them into stronger metalheads than they are for the style that they were raised on. Even Dana, she was a huge punk fan. The reason why we started talking again after high school was because I found her again through MySpace, and she was a Children Bodom fan. And now she's far more into metal than she is punk. That's the kind of thing that we need to do. We need to show people that we're not segregating a-holes, and that there is this community to it. We need to introduce people to these bands they might like. And we need to quit putting people down because you never know who's going to be the next Peter Tägtgren or Jeff Waters of the metal world. You just never know. That guy who's listening to Born of Osiris, 5 years from now may turn around and become the next Devin Townsend. You don't know. And putting people down for no reason is not going to help. Let's try and keep the creativity in the metal world going. Let's try and encourage people to discover more within the metal world. It needs to happen. That's my plea. I'm done. I think I'm done talking about it. I'm going to get myself too worked up. I already wore myself out talking about it and holding my anger back. The only other thing I got to say is never, ever be embarrassed or ashamed to say you're a metal fan or a metalhead or anything like that. Hold on to the style of music that you enjoy. Don't be a dick about it. I mean, really, it's the last thing that we need. We're not varsity jacket-wearing individuals. We're not anything like that. There's such a huge society within metal. We have intelligent people. We have the jockish people. We have the nerds. The dorks. Yeah, there are some a-holes, unfortunately. The creepy guys... We got Satanists. And we got all walks of life when it comes to religion. How about a little unity? Let's not come off like Christian extremists within our own group. Let's be metal. Let's be happy. Let's encourage others. Let's stop looking at Metalocalypse as a show that has more devotion, brotherhood, and unity than reality.